So this woman, she's at a restaurant, she's on a date. And her date, he suddenly needs to make a phone call. So he steps outside for a second. And that is when he just vanishes, never to be seen again. Now the woman, her name's Moon. She's 47, she's single, and she had met her date on a dating app. His name's Paul. And Moon thinks Paul is fine. He's nice, he says nice things, he invites her out, and they meet up at this restaurant. And while they're there, he orders a bunch of food. Chicken, fish, lobster tails. And when he's done with that, he orders 2 more lobster tails and a souffle. But then Paul needs to go outside to make a phone call. So Moon waits there at the table for him to come back. And she waits, and she waits, and she waits. And Paul doesn't come back. He just disappeared. And Paul wasn't kidnapped. He ditched her and stuck her with the $250 tab. And Moon is embarrassed and she's pissed off and she swears she's never gonna go on a restaurant date again. Regardless, sometime later, this woman, Michelle, she also meets Paul through a dating app. And they also go on a date. And at the restaurant, he orders filet mignon, a shrimp salad, and a bunch of stuff. And he eats it all and he's like, oh, I just have to go and grab my phone charger from my car. And then he ditches her too. And Michelle is so embarrassed, she doesn't say anything, she just pays the $130 tab herself. But back to Moon. Moon is still upset and she isn't gonna let this go. In fact, she's so upset after the date, she writes an angry Facebook post. And on it, she posts Paul's picture warning other women not to date him. And pretty quickly, that Facebook post blows up. And people are sharing it, and suddenly Moon's inbox is full of messages from women who are claiming Paul did the same thing to them. Like they meet him on an app and he invites them out to dinner at a nice restaurant. He orders an expensive meal and then he eats it and then he just bounces. Sometimes Paul would even order 2 meals. And he would tell his date, oh, I need to eat a bunch because I'm training as a bodybuilder, which he's not. Often he'll even block the women afterwards on the dating app so that they can't find his account and message him. So Moon's Facebook post blows up, and soon podcasts and media outlets and news stations are all hitting her up for an interview. And they start blasting this story of the Dine and Dash dater everywhere. But even after all this attention, still, no one can find Paul. And he's still out there, and he's still going on dates and scamming women out of meals. Until... At this point, Paul's been doing this scam for a couple of years, and he's scammed over 22 different women. And at some point, it gets so bad that police have to get involved. And they assign the case to this guy, Detective Cass. Now, Cass has some young daughters around dating age that he's thinking about, so Cass wants to catch this guy real bad. And he puts everything into this. He tracks down the latest victim, he interviews her, he's calling news stations that had been reporting on the story. He gets a search warrant to track Paul's cell phone movements. He tracks down Paul's ex-wife and Paul's mother. He even has a female cop make a fake dating profile to try and lure Paul in. But none of that works, and he still can't find Paul. And then 4 months go by, and every road is still a dead end. And Paul is still out there, and he's still scamming. But then, one night, Cass is out on patrol, and he's driving around in the business district. And that's when he spots a man out on the street selling knockoff Lakers t-shirts to tourists. And Cass is like, hey, that guy looks familiar. Because it's Paul, standing right there on the street corner. So Cass is like, gotcha, bitch. And he pulls over and he arrests him right there. Now, I don't have mugshots of him, but here's what Paul looks like in real life. So Paul goes to court, he's sentenced to 120 days in jail, 3 years probation, and he's permanently banned from both Plenty of Fish and Bumble. Meanwhile, since then, even though Moon swore off dating, she actually did go out and start dating again. And she ends up meeting someone nice, and now she's married. Good for her. So shout out to Pasadena.